that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. Um, I know we're having more people kind of uh, stream in, so we'll give everybody just a minute or two. But maybe you can, Eddie, you want to just kind of start with, a little bit about, who you are. I know not everybody is familiar with you as I am, and I'm sure I'm going to learn more today too. So maybe you can start with that while we're letting people kind of stream in. And this is being recorded, if that's okay with you, by the way.
Of course, sure.
Okay, great. I figured, you know.
Everything I do is in public, so I'm more than happy to have things recorded. So absolutely.
Sure, sure. Okay,
A
cool.
bit of
Thank you.
a,
Okay.
yeah, a bit about me. Well, I got into open source before there was Git and GitHub, so it was a long time ago. I'm showing my age now, and it was good fun then, and it's definitely good fun now. But the great thing is that by getting involved in open source consistently, which we'll go through in my talk, it opened so many doors for me. I haven't done a resume or an interview in 10 years because, like you said in a moment ago when we joined, people feel that they know me already because of the content that I put out there, because of my open source contributions and the collaborations I have with people in issues and pull requests. So I go to a meeting or someone says, "Hey, I want to work together and be your client," and so forth. And when I meet them, well, I meet them when I virtually meet them because I do everything remotely. They say, "Oh, it's great to see you again." I'm like, "But this is the first time we're meeting," and they say, "Well, I feel like I know you because of X, Y, and Z," and so I feel it's just so much easier. So by documenting your journey and getting involved in open source, you can just make your life just so much easier. If you want to work for startups or you want to work for big companies, it just opens so many doors for you. That's what I did. I've had an amazing kind of maybe 15, 20 years in tech. The last 10 years have definitely been the most interesting. And I just enjoy sharing that with people. I hope it helps other people, learn faster and get the kind of job or career that they want. And that could change as their life evolves and change. And they might have kids. They might decide they want to, do the corporate job, or they might want to, whatever their decisions are. I just want them to have more options. So, yeah, I really enjoy the community side, but I've got bills to pay as well, so I do have to do some client work, unfortunately. But that always comes last for me, which is need to reprioritize. But this is the fun stuff that gets me up in the morning, and I really enjoy it. One thing I'd like to say is that I'm an open book. So if anyone has any question, I love questions. So please put them in the chat. I really appreciate it. I think we're on here for about 45 minutes. Is that correct, Laura?
Yeah, yeah, we try to keep it within an hour.
Okay, so
So
I'm going to try and do a shorter talk, maybe about 30 minutes. And then I'm really looking forward to just having conversation with people.
perfect. Perfect. Thanks so much. We'll let you get started.
Okay, awesome. If anyone has any questions as I go along, do put them in the chat. I'll try and keep an eye on it. If I do miss it, please unmute and just let me know, and I will check it out. So, who wants to learn about open source? Do let us know in the chat. Say hi. Let's just make sure that you're awake and you want to learn about open source. That would be great. And if you don't want to learn about open source, then thank you very much for coming and supporting. I really appreciate it. So my entire career success, as I mentioned a moment ago, is because of open source, not Leak Code, not Hacker Wars, not LinkedIn. I'm really sorry if anyone loves those, but none of those. I think the interview process is broken. And I really believe in show, don't tell. And that's what open source does. You're kind of showing people. And even if you're just getting started into tech, I want to show you how open source is still for you and how much value you can add and it can add to the project, and then you can grow your network from that. I mean, open source is everywhere. Even your parents are using open source. Even probably your grandparents are using open source. It's in their mobile phones, the cars, the internet, kitchen appliances. I mean, it's even been to Mars. And we've got DGB, love open source, and Gayut, hopefully I pronounced those okay. Welcome. Thanks for saying hi in the chat. For those of you who have seen me on socials, I'm usually with a screaming face, with my laptop near some water, somewhere hot. Apart from today, I'm in freezing cold London, but I got to come home and visit family. I may be screaming in all my photos because my laptop's near water, but I promise I'm a friendly person. I wasn't always doing this. I was working in the corporate world. I was doing high street banks in the UK, government departments in the UK. I did wear a suit to the office many, many years ago, and then slowly realized that's not what I wanted to do. So what is open source? If people could write in the chat and let me know, do you know what open source is? If you don't, do say it in the chat. If you do, then say yes. Feel free to write what you think it is. It'd be great to see. I love seeing everyone's perspective on this. It's really, really good. Why Kagel? Have I pronounced it right? Thank you so much. Thanks for saying hi. I appreciate it. So the way I explain it when people ask me who aren't in tech, like what is open source, I say it's like Twitter or Instagram. You can still post something like you can on those platforms. You can still like it. You can still leave a comment. Or with open source, you can make changes and you can take it so much further. It's moved so much beyond code in open source. I mean, even Hacktoberfest last year, the year before last, was accepting non-code contributions. There's testing, there's documentation, there's project management, there's content creation. There's just so many things. If there's only one thing you take away today from my talk is whatever tech you're using, React, Astro, I can't remember what all the cool stuff is at the moment, Kubernetes, they might not be here in 5, 10 years, but they're all open source and open source will still be here. And I think that's the important thing. And the important thing about open source is collaboration. I'm going to prove that to you in this talk, hopefully, as well. So collaboration is more important than code. Can you make a difference? You might think, well, I'm new to tech. Can I make a difference? Can one person make a difference? Some of the biggest and most popular open source libraries are actually driven by one person. And yes, that has a bit of a risk factor for if they used to call it the bus factor. Now they call it the lottery factor if they win the lottery and decide not to work on it anymore. So there is a bit of a risk. But hopefully we can improve that. But yes, but there are people who have massive projects and very popular projects. But the great thing is you'll get exposed to different perspectives. So you might work on a project and you might think, oh, I don't like the way they've done that. But you do it that way because that's the style they do it in that project. But at least you're aware of that for next time. So on your project, you can decide, I'm not going to do it that way. But you've made the conscious decision not to do it. So you're getting real world experience. I've done lots of interviews for my clients over the years. And if someone comes and says, well, I'm level whatever on Leak Code or Hacker Wars or whatever the names of those things are, it's like, great. They're not real world problems. Show me real world problems that you've solved. Whereas open source allows you to get that, right? You're going to have testing challenges, collaboration and conflicts in terms of Git conflicts, not in terms of people conflicts, hopefully. Deployment issues and all these sorts of things. And that's what you're going to get in a real world project. And open source shows you that. Also gives you the advantage of working with the latest technology. I find in companies, the technologies they use is quite out of date, whereas open source, you can use more cutting edge examples. And to give an example of that, a concrete example, I interviewed someone from the Ministry of Defence in the UK, so the MOD, and they're coming to work on a project. And they had 20 years experience. It's about 5 years ago, so more experience than me. But they couldn't even do like a loop over some data and do some data manipulations like a map or anything, because they had basically been doing the same thing for a month, every month for 20 years. Like it was really odd. They had 20 years experience, but really they didn't. They had a month's experience or 6 months experience. So open source exposes you to so many different technologies and ways of doing things, which I think is really important. I know a lot of people want a mentor, but I don't know why people want one mentor. Everyone can be your mentor. Everyone here in this call is your mentor and my mentor as well. We can all learn from each other. With open source, you can unofficially have so many mentors, which I think is super important. When you raise that pull request, which I'll go into more detail later on, then when you contribute to a project or collaborate on an issue, you get to see all these different perspectives. And more companies and hiring managers and recruiters are looking at people's GitHub profiles. So it's good to be active on that. I don't mean active like 100 hours in one weekend. Obviously, that's not physically possible. But there's no value in that. The value is little and often, like, going to the gym or brushing your teeth. And they're not looking for what you think they're looking for. They're not looking, is your code the best code in the world? Because if you're still learning, then in a month's time, your best code today should be actually be not very good, because in a month's time, it'd be a lot better. They're looking to see how you collaborate with people. I think that's really, really hard. You can teach someone how to do a map and manipulate data or use a reduce instead of a for loop, etc., and all the rest. You can teach someone that. But if someone doesn't know how to collaborate with people, doesn't know how to communicate with people, then that's a harder thing to teach. And that takes practice as well. So people call it the soft skills. I call it the core skills, because I think whatever role you're in, testing, development, DevOps, whatever it is, you need to be able to communicate and collaborate. I mentioned it's not just about code. There's tests, documentation, design, accessibility, performance, project management, user accessibility, automated testing, automation in general, penetration, infrastructure as code. There's just so many things you can get involved in and contribute to open source. In addition to that, there is content creation. There is just things you can do to help the project that is outside the repo. And you can still get a green square for it, because a lot of repos now have kind of a content creation file where you can put your name and a link to the content that you created. Not a tweet, but something like a video or a blog post will be in this. That way you get more traffic, and that way the project gets more traffic as well. It's kind of like a two-way street, a bit, how we do open source. I also think it's about context. If we had a conversation now, and this is actually one of my interview tests that I give to people, so here's a bit of a secret. We chat about your project or our project or whatever it is, and we chat about a bug or an idea that you have, and then I ask the person to raise an issue about their idea. And the people who don't contribute to open source raise it very differently to the ones who contribute to open source. Because the ones who contribute to open source are used to that asynchronous kind of communication. Someone's in a different time zone. When they're asleep, they're awake, and all the rest. So someone who doesn't contribute to open source will say in the issue, following our discussion, I choose option B. And if you weren't involved in that conversation, or you have terrible memory like me, then you're going to come back to that issue like an hour later or the next day, and I want to be like, option B, what was option A and C or D? I have no idea. Whereas someone who contributes to open source is going to write, following our discussion on Discord on whatever date, there was option A, B, and C, and I recommend we choose option B. They're going to give that context. So someone who wasn't in the discussion is going to have that context, be able to jump on board. And that's really, really important. And that's something you really learn in open source. Not just about code, onboarding. When we get new contributors to the project or new people to the project, I think this is such an opportunity to improve the project, because documentation written by the maintainers or the founders of the project are the worst people to write documentation, because they make so many assumptions. So if I've made a project, I do start the documentation, but it is in the worst state. No matter how hard I try, it's going to have so many assumptions. The best person to write the documentation is someone coming to the project new, because they're going to look through it and they're going to say, well, what does this mean? And I think you're missing a step here, because I did step 3, I went to 4 and it got an error. And so they can ask questions and improve it. And that's why I love it when new people come to any open source project, because they can help and make it better. And what I always say to people is, when they say, Eddie, I want to get started with your project, could you tell me more about it? I say, no. I say, can you tell me more about it? Because if you can't, there's nothing wrong with you. Nothing wrong with you. There's something wrong with our project. But with your help, we can improve it for the next person. So I absolutely love new contributors. So if you're a new contributor or new to tech, it's not a negative, it's a positive. And so make sure you think of it in a positive way. You can bring that value to the project. Like I said, when you get onboarded, then that new perspective isn't there anymore. So therefore, the next people can help and so forth. Let me just check the chat, see if I missed anything. Completely transparent and free available code. Yeah, completely transparent. I love that. True, and freely available. Absolutely. Reduce the learning curve. Open source at different aspects. Source code is viewable and editable. Crypto developers. MIT, licensing is a whole other topic, absolutely. And there are some open source licenses, and some that are super, super open source, and some that are, a little bit, they're still open source, but you can't use it for commercial and so forth. So we can chat about that at the end if you wish as well. I'm not an expert in it, but I can share my little understanding of it. Okay, so I'm going to prove to you now that open source is about collaboration, not code. So if you get an idea, you kind of have a discussion on GitHub discussions or Discord or wherever it is. You collaborate with people, you communicate with people. And then once it's kind of solidified a little bit, you raise an issue. And an issue has no code. You're still going to raise an issue. You're going to say how you're going to achieve it, what the problem you're trying to solve is, etc., and so on. Probably not in that order, other way around. And you might say you want to work on it. You might have a bit more collaboration. So it's collaboration and communication again. And then for those of you who don't know what a pull request is, a pull request is just the same as an issue. It's got a title and description, but then it has some project changes attached to it. and that's it. And then in the pull request, you are going to then chat about those changes, either in line or at the end of the pull request. So you're still collaborating again. So really, it's collaboration one, collaboration step two, a little bit of code changes to the a little bit of changes to the project, and collaboration. So it's collaboration, some changes with collaboration. So there's a lot of collaboration on there, and that's why collaboration communication is so important. A project that has good collaboration, good communication, good documentation can really succeed and do well. And I've seen well architected projects with great automation, great code do really badly because they haven't got any contributing guide, onboarding docs. They haven't got any of those, and they don't really collaborate with people. And everyone's pulling in different directions. So it's super important, and it's hard to do. It's not an easy thing. So shameless plug, in the open source community, we say collaboration first, code second. And that's what's allowed us to achieve what we achieve. And, as we're all friends here, I'm going to say that I fixed a typo on my first contribution. Okay. And remember that I contributed before there was Git and GitHub. So it was a long time ago, but it still would be the same now. If those of you who are here, if you could write in the chat if you have contributed to open source already or not yet, it'll be interesting to know. And while you're doing that, I'm going to say that my 10th contribution was also fixing a typo as well. And there's no shame in that. I believe we all start by fixing typos, for number one. Two, fixing typos are really important because if someone doesn't speak English as their first language, a typo can throw them off and make them kind of Google, what does this mean, and so forth. So it is really important to fix those typos. And in my repos, there are lots of typos. So you're welcome to fix those. But by doing that, you get more confident with the process because it's a bit scary. You need to fork the project, which means take a copy of the project into your own account. So you've got a copy of the project in your own account. And then you need to make changes in a branch and then make a pull request from your branch and fork to the original project and the default branch. And that is really scary the first time. And to be honest, the second time is really scary because you've got to make sure that you update your fork, go back to the default branch and create a new branch, then repeat it again. So if there's a second tip that you take away from my talk is never commit to the default branch, which is usually called main. Never commit to that, even in your fork, because it will work on the first time you do it, but the second time you'll get conflicts with yourself and you'll wonder why. Your changes should only appear in the default branch in your fork after you update your fork. So it gets merged in the original repo. And then when you sync it, that's how you get down to default branch in your fork. If that doesn't make sense, we can always do a demo later on. But get yourself kind of more confident with the process. As I mentioned, it's like, open source should be like going to the gym and brushing your teeth, little and often. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You don't brush your teeth all weekend and then don't brush your teeth the rest of the year. It wouldn't have the same effect, but by doing it every morning and evening, it has such a kind of compounding effect over months and years. And you don't wake up in the morning and go, oh my God, I need to brush my teeth. What stress. You just do it. And open source should be the same. If you have 20 minutes available, then you can look at a project. Maybe you can look at the issues, maybe put a comment, support someone, maybe raise an issue. And then the next day in your next 20 or 30 minutes, you can see, so you can reply and say you want to work on an issue, start planning it. And then the day after, start doing a bit more work on it. And maybe a few days later, after a bit more work, raise the pull request and so forth. So it doesn't all have to happen at once. And, just like if you fell asleep in front of the TV on a Saturday night and forgot to brush your teeth, you're not going to wake up the next morning, your teeth have gone all yellow or fallen out or whatever happens to your teeth. And the same thing with open source. If you take a week off because you've gone on holiday, that's great. Take the week off. It is really important. Not like you would do with your teeth, but, with open source, it's good to have breaks. So what are some of the challenges as a contributor? I'd love to see in the chat. So let's see. Yes, GitHub, PR mode, reviewing, submitting issues as well. Awesome. Open source issues, improve information on community websites. Love that. And non-technical community member, I've contributed by showcasing work by the community. Love that. Always lift other people up. Definitely. Absolutely love that. Discussions on a PR. Yes, you can review pull requests even if you're not a maintainer on the project. And that adds so much value to the project and really helps maintainers. The only thing you can't do is hit that merge button, but you can do everything else. So yes, what are some of the challenges as an open source contributor? do you have? I mean, I know time's difficult for everyone, but like I said, 30 minutes a week, a day, whatever you can do, the more you can do, the more it benefits you. But if you're going to do 30 minutes a week, an hour a week, that's also fine. Just be consistent with that. People struggle to find projects. There are so many projects on GitHub. I mean, well over 100 million. I know that for sure. So many. I know some people want to contribute to like the biggest and best and fastest moving project with the most stars. To be honest, you're setting yourself up to fail. That's like going to, I don't know, play tennis with someone who's a professional tennis player for your first time. Like it's not going to be a fun game for either of you. So I would, start, small, little, and often. I think is important. So if there's any projects that you use already and you found a typo in the documentation, or the test coverage isn't up to scratch, or somewhere you can improve it, then maybe that's a good place to start because you're already familiar with that project. Join the community, see what projects they have got. Speak to your friends in that community. What projects are they contributing to? What projects do they have? Get involved in those. I think that's super, super important. And if you find a bug in a project and you don't want to fix it, or you don't know how to fix it, that's fine. You don't have to fix it, but finding the bug adds value to the project. I think that's really, really important. You don't need to be an expert to get into open source. And to give an example, Sarah left law after 15 years. I'm trying to get my dates right, about 2 years ago, to join me in open source. And she'd never really used GitHub or anything like that. And now on an open source project, she's the second most active contributor. Can you imagine? And she's not coding, she's doing other things that kind of seem to get forgotten about, and Sarah's really good at it. So again, if you come from a different industry, that's a superpower. Use that experience. And don't worry, you cannot break anything. People worry, I think, about breaking things in repos. You can't break anything. And if you do, it's the maintainer's fault, not yours. As a contributor, if in doubt, try it, click it, do it. You cannot break anything. Like I said, it's the maintainer's responsibility to have certain rules in place and so on. So, I mean, there are various ways to find projects. I know that's the biggest asked question. Let me just see in the chat if anything's coming up. Nothing new just yet. So you can search as an advanced search on GitHub, where you can, search for a certain language, a date since has the project been active, etc. But that's not great. You can search by like so many things. Like, the search is really good, but it's not what you want. So, I mean, you can search by labels like good first issue, but most good first issues aren't actually good first issues. So that's a really bad label to search for, unfortunately. Like I said, I'll join a community, and don't join too many. I see people going, I'm in 20 communities. Well, you can't be active in those communities. So that's like joining 20 gyms and say you're going to get fit by going to 20 gyms that you never go to. Less is more. I would say join 1 or 2 communities and be active in those communities. And you can also search for topics. Again, I don't think that's a really good way to do it. I would say join a community, see what projects they have got. And once you start contributing, you're going to discover so many projects. You'll have the opposite problem of, oh my God, I want to contribute to all these problems, but I don't know which one. I mean, when you find a project, and if you can't find issues to contribute to, you can also click on the Insights tab. And this is a great way to contribute or to check if the project is ready for contributions. So click on the Insights tab at the top, then the Community tab down the side. Yes, I use light mode in GitHub for any of you who noticed that. And then check that it's got a full house. Like if it's missing a code of conduct, you could add one from a template. If it's missing a license, you could raise an issue and say, what license do you want? There are things you can do. And if it's a full house here, great. That means, they've thought about it and you can contribute. Once you found the repo, I would say also check that is it friendly. I would go to the pull request tab at the top. I would click on the closed sub tab and just check the ones that were closed. So there'll be like purple icons, they were merged, ignore those. Look at the ones with the red icon on the left. They're the ones that were closed and not accepted. Check that they were closed in a friendly way. And if they were, that's fine. But if they were closed with no message, then maybe that's not a project you want to contribute to, because it is a bit disheartening when you put in some effort and they just close it without a message. Raising the issue first and getting it assigned to you will also reduce the chances of that happening, because sometimes pull requests do get closed because there's been no issue raised and they don't know what the changes are for, etc. and so on. So definitely read the contributing guide and see how the project wants you to contribute. There is good first issues, which I don't like. So what we do in the Eddie Hub projects, not all of them, we're experimenting with a couple. We're going to roll it out to more later on. Is we use points. So you can see you've got at the top you've got points two, and you don't know what the value of points are, and that's fine, and you won't. But if you've done a 1 or 2 pointer, which is usually a good first issue, then you might want to challenge yourself and do a 3 pointer next time. But you know not to jump to an 8 pointer. Or if you did a 5 pointer and it was a bit hard and you don't have much time this week, you might then pick a 3 or a 2 pointer. I wouldn't suggest picking a 1. Leave those for people who are new to the project for the first time. So if you're new, that's absolutely fine. But second and third time, try and pick something a bit harder, but you don't have to keep going. You could stick at 3, 5 until you got time or you want that challenge, or you could pair with someone on something with a bigger number. We have people pairing all the time on the bigger numbers, and it's awesome. Automate everything. I mean, this goes for any language or technology, but I'm going to use JavaScript here as an example. So this is the file on the left. The darker file is the package.json file. And here we've got scripts that you run. So you could run npm run dev, npm run test, all the ones down there. A lot of these aren't automated in most projects. People forget to automate them. And I think it's really important to check the project builds, to run the lint, run the tests, maybe run Storybook, whatever they've got. And on the right, you can see a small GitHub action that runs the lint in this case. And that's a way you could contribute to a project, because that will just save contributors and the maintainers so much time for people to get feedback sooner if the lint fails or the build fails, rather than them trying to deploy it and find out it broke later on. So make sure all that is automated. And also in this example, you can see it says Node 16. That's probably quite an old version of Node. I'm pretty sure it is. So you can look at people's GitHub actions and see what versions. You can even search GitHub for this and upgrade their versions of Node on the GitHub action. And trust me, they'll be grateful. I know I would be grateful. So there are so many things that you could do. I know people want to do big, shiny new features, but that's quite hard to do. So set yourself up to succeed, not to fail. Automated tests. Most projects, including mine, don't have the best test coverage. So we do have tests, but they're not the best test coverage. So you could add some tests. And the example that I want to show you here is we're using Playwright, which allows us to write tests that are incomplete. So you can see the one on line 5.5 that's got a block of comments. Someone has said, well, this test is needed, and these are the steps that should be tested, but they haven't written it. So what they've done is they've added value already, but then they've left an opportunity for somebody else to add value to it and to actually fill in the Playwright code and actually finish off the test. So someone who knows a bit of JavaScript could come in, and most of those steps you copy from a previous test anyway, and probably just change the variables, the parameters that are passed in. So there's so much opportunity for people to get involved. Or if you see a test is missing and you don't know how to write it, you could just write the skeleton. It's always about adding value little and often. Thank you so much, DGB. Yeah, the point system is really interesting. I've done a few videos on it on YouTube, and it's worked really well in BioDrop. So when people are new to contributing, we recommend they do a 1 or 2 just to get started, practice the flow, and then they can ramp up. And we try and tell people not to jump. So it uses Fibonacci, so it's 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. I don't think we have anything bigger than that. We try to break them down and split them up. But we try to tell someone not to jump, like go from a 2 to an 8 or something like that to build up slowly. Storybook's another one. We've got Storybook, and these get out of date so often. And a lot of the time, you just need to pass in the parameters to the component. So this just allows us to view and play with the React or any other tool that you're using components. But a lot of these get out of date. So for example, you can see we have the component is called navlink, and we pass it the parameter path, item, and mode. I bet that's out of date. I bet we've changed those names or added more parameters in or something like that. So again, it's a great way to add value to the project. I mentioned before, you don't have to be a maintainer to review people's pull requests, and you can ask questions, and that's a great way to add value. Asking focused questions is really, really good. Reviewing pull request does add to your contributing graph. So you'll probably see at the top right, you see those kind of green tiles that most people go for. As someone who hires for their clients, I don't really look at that green tile so much. I look at the bit underneath where you've got that diamond graph. where you've got kind of commits, code reviews, issues, and pull requests. It is nice to have a balance. You'll never get it perfect, but I like to see double figures in each of those, like more than 10% on any one of those. Yeah, is really, really important because most people have like 99 or 100% commits, or issues or something like that. And uh, code reviews are really important and really, really hard to do. But please don't blindly just approve pull requests or disapprove them on a project, because that really confuses the maintainers and the community. And that's the fastest way to get blocked from a project. So you definitely don't want to do that. But like I said, asking questions does add value. I mentioned content creation earlier on, so I just want to touch on how we do it in BioDrop. This is what Hacktoberfest recommends. Does everyone know what Hacktoberfest is? If you don't, let me know in the chat and I'll explain it. But really briefly, Hacktoberfest is October, where everyone contributes to open source. A lot of projects like focus on creating good first issues, actually creating good first issues. And then you used to be able to get a t-shirt if you did 4 pull requests. Now you get a digital badge. So it's a great way to collaborate with people. But my point here is, if you wrote a blog post or did a live stream or YouTube video or whatever it is, you can add it to this file via a pull request, so you can still get the green square and link to your content. So even things that don't happen on GitHub, you can still kind of make it happen and link it to that. So it's super important. It adds value to the project, and we want you to get value back. And then you can level up even further by becoming a maintainer. This is such an interesting way to get even more experience and learn faster, because you get to see the other side of the coin. I've seen people who contribute their issues and their pull requests get better, but when they become a maintainer, it gets better like tenfold immediately, because they get to see other people raising issues and pull requests that might not be very clear or make a lot of sense. And so by seeing that, it automatically helps them improve their own as well. And to become a maintainer on a project, just consistently add value. You don't have to add the biggest features. You don't have to be the biggest contributor, anything like that. It's just consistently add value to the project. And that could be, supporting other people. We have a maintainer on our project who doesn't code, but they're always checking if issues are duplicate. They're always saying, is it similar to this? Is it related? Could it conflict with this? Should we do these 2 issues at different times? And that's amazing. They try to get user feedback on the issues, like, users, would you find this valuable? Please give it a thumbs up or not. And they became a maintainer because it just adds so much value to the project. And if you customize your GitHub profile, then you are a maintainer really already, because someone could comment on your repo. Actually, have all of you customized your GitHub profiles yet? Do let me know in the chat. I'd love to check out some of your GitHub profiles. So do, if it's allowed, do drop your links in the chat as well. Okay, we've been going for about 30 minutes, so I'll just wrap up. Just a few things of not to do. Don't use the default branch, ever. Like I said, it will work first time, but it will cause you problems second time. Don't do massive PRs. The bigger they are does not mean it adds more value. I think the smaller they are, the more value it adds, because we can get it merged or reviewed quicker, merged quicker, and out to the user quicker. So that's really important. Don't DM people. I like to do everything in public. Other people can help because we're all in different time zones. Therefore, if I'm asleep and you have a question, then someone else, one of the maintainers or community members, can ask. It takes a lot of load off the maintainers. Try not to create noise. I see people raising an issue, then putting a comment in, tagging the maintainers, then going to their issue and tagging the maintainers. It's like, we'll get the notification from the pull request. Don't worry. Obviously, if it's been a week, then do tag someone and chase up. But I do get some messages, have you merged my PR yet? When did you create it? 3 minutes ago. That is true. And that was a DM on Twitter, Discord, and some various other places as well. So this does happen, and it doesn't help. It doesn't make us go faster. It makes us go slower. Bonus tips: join a community, be active. You're here already, so that's awesome. Read the contributing guide is so important. And if there isn't one, maybe you can add one. Before you create an issue, check that a similar issue doesn't exist, and be as specific as possible when you ask questions. I think that's really, really important. Yeah, and other ways to look for a project, to open source project to contribute to. I created the repo rater project recently. It's instead of valuing a project on its stars, or this project's got 10,000 stars more, and this project's only got 500, so the 10,000 star project is obviously better. It's not the case. So we wanted a way for people to rate their experience of contributing to a project. So that's what Repo Rater is. I only started it like a few weeks ago over the Christmas holidays. And you're welcome to come contribute on that project with me as well. So that's in Eddie Hub. You're welcome to come and join us. We're all learning together. Conclusion, open source is not just about code. Open source is for everyone, no excuses. And open source will help you upskill faster, absolutely. And open source is a marathon, not a sprint, and will open more doors for you. That's it. And those are all my socials on my BioDrop QR code. But any questions, let me know. Oh, I've got some questions coming in. Great. I hope that was okay. I hope that wasn't too fast. I was just conscious of time.
That was perfect, Eddie. I have people messaging me privately saying this is the best talk we've had so far. So there's some
Thank you so
direct instant
much.
feedback for you. I mean,
That,
you've done fantastic.
that's made my day. Thank you so much, everyone. It's a great way to start the week. I really appreciate it. I see some questions coming in as well. So
Yeah, I'll
I'm
let you go to
excited.
those questions.
Awesome. But any constructive feedback, everyone, do let me know. I do want to improve and get better. Okay, I have a few questions, Eddie. Thanks for the presentation. Why Kaggle? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. You're welcome. How to attract open source devs when you are a volunteer community? Good question. So when you say attract, is it to your community's open source projects? Is that how you want to do it, or is it to the Discord? I mean, I know they both kind of end up complement each other. Like if they come to the Discord, they're more likely to contribute to open source project. If they come to your open source project, they're then more likely to join Discord. So I would say keep the project active. Make sure that it's got a good onboarding. Like people can, like it's all about the experience rather than what we said. Like a lot of you probably won't remember everything that I've said, or hopefully remember one thing I've said today, but you remember kind of how it made you feel. Did it make you feel energized or passionate, or no, I fell asleep, Eddie was boring. But I think it's the same with repositories. If someone comes to your repo and there's a screenshot in the README and they go, oh, this looks really great, and oh, I can see how to get this set up, and oh, they're really active, and I see them chatting in Discord about it. You're going to want to be part of that. So it's that developer experience, or the and I know we call it DX, but it's not just about developers, so maybe it's not the best use of words. But you know what I mean? It's that experience that people get when they come to that repo, and that's why I think it's really really important for people to get it reviewed by people with fresh pair of eyes. Hopefully that answers that question. If not, please do follow up with other questions. But people want to be part of something, so if they can see themselves be part of a project and a community, they want to be part of something, and they want to, I think, have some way to give it a bit of direction as well. Question 2 is, what improvements can we as open source community do? Oh, that's a hard question. I think we can be more inclusive. I think inclusive in terms of language, inclusive in terms of people from different backgrounds, people who want to do open source, but maybe in terms of design, because they're not coders, they're designers. Some people want to focus on accessibility or performance. I think we need to include those people, because a project, a code by itself is not a complete project. There is so much more to it. So I think we need to get better at that, and I'm still learning on that front as well. So I'd love any thoughts on that. I'd love to hear as well. 3, have you heard of DigiByte before today? Only from LT from Twitter. So yes, I have, but only a small amount. I think I heard someone say that you need to hear something. I can't remember exactly what the number is, but it was quite high, like 6 or 8 times before you start thinking, I'm going to look into that and see what it's about. So I think I've heard it a few times, but I think I need to hear it more, if that makes sense. And same with other people. So don't try and create content. I think that's really hard. I would document your journey. And what I mean by that is you could take a screenshot of this and put it on Twitter and say, in the DigiByte community, we learned about open source, and share 3 tips, because that makes it more shareable, if that makes sense. Like for example, if someone tagged me with a screenshot of this and tagged DigiByte as well, and they said, thank you, Eddie, for the talk, I'm going to like it. 100% I'm going to like it. I'm probably going to reply and say thank you. But if someone then said, thank you for the talk, as the previous example I gave, but then gave 3 points, I learned these 3 things. They were super helpful, 1, 2, and 3. Now it's reshareable. So I'm going to reshare it to my community, because it now adds value to people who weren't there, if that makes sense. So you always got to think, does it add value to someone else? I mean, it's great to say thank you in public and give a shout out. I absolutely appreciate that. But it's less shareable than doing that with some tips, or even the tips could be even in the reply. and it will still be shareable if it can't all fit into the main message. So hopefully more people will hear about DigiByte soon. But you seem to have a really active community, so that's awesome. Yes, contribute to code on GitHub and improve core protocol. We do not have funds like other projects. Yeah, funds is hard. I think that's where open source falls down, to be honest. I mean, I worked full time on the BioDrop project all last year, me and Sarah, and I think we made like $3.50 a month in November and December. So we dipped into our savings the entire year to cover that. And we paid a lot of money for branding and design and logos and stuff. And we learned a lot from it. We're starting a new project as of this week. It's actually a job board, and I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on it another time. But we'll do things a bit differently. Yes, open source is tough. To get funding for open source is hard. I did go into the GitHub Accelerator, and they gave us $20,000 for the project, but that goes fast. When you try and get like a company to do branding and design and logo, I mean, a good quarter or half, I think maybe half of that went straight away. So yeah, it is tough. That's definitely a separate discussion, and I'm more than happy to have that conversation because it's hard. Jose, thank you so much for sharing your GitHub. I'll take a look at towards the end. What would you make you personally excited to contribute to an open source project? Oh, you got the hard questions today. So I would say that I see the project has longevity, I think, because when people say, hey, Eddie, I'm starting a podcast, I want you to be the first person on there. I've done that a few times, but then they don't do this the second or third, or they do the second or third and stop. I'd rather be their 100th person on their podcast. And I think the same with an open source project. To get somebody from day one is really hard. But if the project's been going for 6 months and it's been consistently moving forward, then they can see that it's not going to just die, for one. And two, if you've got a roadmap and they can see you got plans for the next few months, then they want to be part of that. So that's what I would suggest. Show a history, and also show that there's a future plans as well, because a lot of open source projects just get started in a weekend and stopped on a weekend, and people want to contribute to something that's got longevity. Excuse me. This was great. Question more for more experienced folks. Based on this talk, where are areas for non-developers to contribute? My skills are rusty. DGB. So I'm not familiar with your projects, so I'm not sure I can say. Could you share maybe a bit more on that? What sort of projects have you got? What sort of things do you want to achieve? Maybe I could help with that. I mean, I've got a Discord for Eddie Hub, so I can talk a bit about that if you want. We also have open source projects. We also do community calls. I mean, just like yourself, really. But maybe I can share some ideas, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you'll do as well. Awesome. Oh, I see it now. DGB Archie. I see it. Okay, my bad. Okay, sorry, I'm a bit slow. Hey, it's late for me on a Sunday night. Yeah, sure. And tag me. I'm more than happy to reshare that as well. How can DigiByte community help me? How can we collaborate? I love collaborations. So absolutely. I mean, we could do like a community call on your Discord and a community call on ours, like a part 1 and part 2. I mean, we do like public speaking practice calls on ours. What sort of calls do you do where we could share it in the community and see if people want to come over and join? Because I never ever feel that, oh my God, you're going to steal my community members. Obviously, I don't want like people coming into a community and just spamming links all the time, because I just think that is just not very polite. But in terms of collaborations, I am all for it. And then if people want to come over to your server, then perfect. I don't feel that anyone's going to steal anyone, if that makes sense. People, in our community, they love our community, but if they outgrow it, or they want something else, or they found something that suits them better because of the speed or the technology, and they go somewhere else, I'm super happy for them. As long as they get something out of it, that's all I care about. I don't look at the numbers anymore. So appreciate taking your time. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm so passionate. I sometimes go too fast. When I give public talks, I have Sarah in the audience with a banner. She lifts it up and it says, slow down, because I get too excited. And she's like, slow down, read this, Eddie. And I'm like, okay, slow down, take a breath. But I do get really, really excited. Open source and community just really have just been what I've been living and breathing for the last 10 years. And, I wouldn't be here today without the open source community. So for me, it's just amazing. And if I didn't need to eat, sleep, and do client work, then I would just be doing this all the time. Just whatever it is, coding on a feature, sharing my screen in Discord, people can come and pair with me. They can contribute to it, or they can just watch, or whatever they want. I love all of this. So I really, really appreciate it. Yes, thank you, Laura, so much. I really appreciate the organizing all of this. It was awesome. Any more
Well,
questions?
I thought you did an amazing job. I thought your speed was perfect. So
Yeah.
no, no suggestions there. Yeah, I think we all got, some nuggets that we'll be definitely sharing out, and, we'll keep our eye on your work and supporting you and your journey. I get tired just watching, like, reading your channel, but I like to sit on my couch in Pittsburgh.
No
So thank you for
worries. Um,
um
if we've got time, maybe you can tell me a bit more about your community. I'd love to learn a bit more about it.
sure. Sure, I'd be happy to. So DigiBytes, it's a 10-year-old UTXO blockchain. And so this is a culmination of a 10-year community. So it's very veteran. We've got people who've been here for like almost 10 years. We've been people
So,
who've been here for 3 months. So we're all kind of, in the melting pot together, and global, so we have everybody from everywhere around the world. So like you were saying about the asynchronous, you can tell when somebody's not working with something that's open source. Yeah, I can totally, and I think everybody in here, because everything is volunteer based, so we're all just kind of doing our part. Some of our, like I'm a educator, I'm a math teacher by my day job. We've got people
ah,
in here who are business
awesome.
people and, retired Marines. Always comes in handy in,
Yeah.
blockchain space.
Well, they're
But
super. They're super organized. I've noticed. I went to an event recently, and there were a lot of people who come from the military, and they're 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 focused on the project and the organization, and it's just brilliant. It's amazing. I think that's why I say I love the different perspectives in the boiling pot. Um, Having Sarah join me from law in my open source business just took it to the next level because she brought through stuff that I couldn't ever dream of doing because I was didn't either have time, I don't have the capability because I'm too busy focusing on the code. So I love that. So sorry to interrupt you, but yeah,
no,
absolutely.
no, that's great. So it's really what we're, the drive that a lot of us have, because we do volunteer a lot for those projects. Is I would say kind of, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong or pipe in. Um, we really are looking at like peer-to-peer decentralized transactions, so that's kind of that's our common denominator, even though we all come from different backgrounds of, I mean, every possible background you can think of. So it's not always an easy journey, and because it's decentralized, there's no CEO. It's like Bitcoin, right? So there's no bosses. So also makes it a very interesting journey. Um, but uh, but yeah, I mean, it ebbs and flows, but we're sticking with it, and having someone like you come in and talk with us, like I'm hearing people say, it's like I feel re-energized about what we're trying to do. So like that, I mean, not to sound too like, cliche, but that really helps, in times where it gets tough.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I'm only human and I have my days where I think, oh, you know what? I've been on this bug for 3 days. I just can't be bothered. But then someone in the community just says something and, you know, they share a link and say, "Oh, have you thought about this? And I've looked at this and maybe this will help." I'm like, "Oh my God, that's it. Thank you so much." And it's just in 10 minutes, it's just changed from me being really down, can't be bothered to do any work that day to, yes, we can get this finished and let's go on to the next feature. So you're right. The community is amazing because we all have our ups and downs. We've all got family, work, bills, weather. It's got a massive storm coming here in the UK, which is why I say weather. Here's some ice hitting the window at the moment. But yes, and the community is so supportive. So I'm glad I could help. I know everyone will help me with motivation because I'll have my days where I'm not at my most energetic, let's say. Just reading the chat as well. Our biggest challenge is to find consistency in the development area. Incentives are a huge area if you have feedback. Yeah. So I see 2 points there. So consistency in development, I think, is really important. Just having that project move forward consistently, and it could just be, you might have a few weeks of documentation just getting improved or tests getting improved. Doesn't always have to be features, features, features. And I think having a break from features and giving things time to settle and fix bugs and tech debt is also important. But as long as the project feels like it's moving forward, I think that's the important part. Um, in terms of incentives, I've tried, actually, we were talking about this on Twitter Space earlier on today. I've tried many different types of incentives, and the people who really want to contribute don't really want those incentives, which is quite interesting. So I've tried giving away swag from that community or project. I've tried saying, well, you can have a one-to-one call if the top contributor that month, or with any one of the maintainers you want, or all the maintainers. I've tried, we mentioned swag, maintainers. I said I can give you a shout out on Twitter, etc. and so forth. But usually the people who kind of drop in and just, want to fix a typo, which is fine, but they're not there for the long game. They want those kind of incentives. But the people who are there for the long game and just want to collaborate with people and learn from each other and push the project forward, I find they don't want those sorts of incentives. They just are happy to collaborate with people when they can and learn from each other and so forth. So that's a hard one, and I'm still learning on that front. So any experience or thoughts or ideas in that would be super helpful, because I find that's a hard one to solve. So yeah. So I don't have an answer for that one. I feel I'm here to start the conversation. I don't feel I have all the answers. I think all my talks are about starting the conversation, sharing what I know, and then the next time I give a talk, I'll improve it because of all the questions and feedback and so forth. But yeah, I'm always still learning as well.
Well, this was great. I think we're getting kind of close to time. I know it's getting late for you, and you, like you said, guys. I hope you went to the store. I'm wearing this. We've been cold in Pittsburgh for Dan and I in the frozen tundra. So I hope you went to the store. You're ready for your storm.
I did. I went just before, so it's all good because the
Okay, good.
storm's coming in tonight. So yes, this is the first winter I spend in England. Usually, I'm in Thailand for winter, so I'm usually in the heat. So I'm not used to this at all. Yeah.
Well, we hope you have a good night. Thanks you so
Thank
much.
you
I'm sure
all,
we'll all be seeing you on social media, and
for sure.
yeah, can't thank you enough. We'll see you
Thank you.
around. Thanks, guys, for all joining for the talk.
Thank you all for joining. Bye, everyone. Have a great week.
Bye.